If you've played Smash Ultimate, you probably know the wonderful feeling of having Thunderjolts hurled at you 5 million times per second. Luckily, Steve doesn't have to deal with this, since he can just put up a wall and haha, you really thought that would work, Steve? You really thought you stood a chance against the tier list? Yes. Hey everyone, Waidu here once again with another Steve tutorial, or Stewtorial, if you will. Today we're going to be talking about using Steve's blocks like lightning rods to divert Thunderjolts from Pikachus who like to use them a lot. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe and I'll promise never to say the words tutorial ever again. Alright, so I've got the training mod pack here to help me demonstrate. Let's say you're fighting a Pikachu and Pikachu is doing Pikachu things, right? You're neutral and there's a whole lot of T-Jolts coming your way. It's going to be very difficult to mine. If you get hit by them, it's going to reset your mining animation. Not fun. You can of course block and try to get mining done in between the blocks, but it's not going to be very efficient. You're going to be taking some damage, especially in an online environment where it's harder to react to these things. Parrying is a bit better this patch, but even so, it's going to be very difficult to get what you want done. Of course, there's also the fact that Pikachu won't just be jumping in place and spamming these things in an actual game, right? Pikachu's going to be using them and rushing towards you with aggressive pressure, Thunderjolt into dash grabs and all sorts of things that you don't want to happen to you. And all this happens even though Steve is supposed to be a character that's very good at dealing with projectiles, right? If you're fighting like a Samus or a Mega Man even, it's not too hard to just put down a block or two and suddenly all their projectiles don't work, right? But Pikachu, those projectiles go straight over the wall that you put up. So on the surface, it looks like something that really messes with Steve's game plan, right? You can try to put down blocks in whatever order you want, and the T-Jolts are going to be climbing over there and making life very difficult for you. But of course, Steve has tons of tools that other characters in this game simply don't have, chief among them is blocks, so I got to thinking, how can I actually use these blocks most effectively to avoid Pikachu's Thunderjolt-inflicted hell? So the setup we're looking for should have a couple of key properties. First off, we want it to be as good against as many different Thunderjolt timings and spacings as possible, right? We don't want a setup that just works against one particular timing, and then completely fails every other timing, right? That wouldn't be very good. We want it to be versatile. Second up, we want it to be quick and safe to set up. So we don't want a setup that's really awesome, but takes forever to set up, and it wouldn't actually be any good in an actual game where you're trying to get time for yourself, right? And likewise, if the setup involves you going to a position where Thunderjolt's going to hit you, probably not the best thing to do either. And finally, if possible, we want to use as few resources as we can. What's the point of making a setup where you mine for resources if you have to burn everything you have to make it, right? This is something we're going to have to think about when using TNT, because TNT blocks projectiles like that. Not all of them, but it is pretty good at blocking Thunderjolts from many different spacings, but TNT costs so much, so that's something we'll always have to weigh into our designs. So we're looking for a setup that is quick and safe, really versatile, and also cost-effective. And if we could find something that satisfies all those conditions, we'll be a very happy Steve indeed. So the first thing I came up with was really simple. It was just putting a couple blocks in the right place so that Thunderjolt gets trapped between them, right? This looks really badass, so I probably use it for like the video thumbnail and stuff, but even though it is effective on certain timings, it isn't actually all that versatile. So even though if I set it up here, it'll work, if I try to set it up, let's say, over here, it'll just go straight around it, right? And this is a really big challenge when dealing with Thunderjolt. Thunderjolt just goes around terrain, and it just does these ridiculous things that you wouldn't think it would be able to do. But, you know, that's the Pikachu privilege, and it's our job to deal with it. Even if I make a block standing in the air on its own, it'll still just climb around it and hit me. And that's really crazy, because it really limits the options we have to deal with Thunderjolt. But there is one property of Thunderjolt that we can use to our advantage that I think is really important, and it's the fact that it has this really wide arc. Even though that arc makes it completely miss certain blocks, you'll see here, it'll just go around it completely and hit me. That arc can be used to divert the course of Thunderjolt. and sort of like a lightning rod, honestly. And we can make some really cool setups with that in mind. If you think about it, right, like building a big old wall like 4 blocks tall, that would be pretty satisfactory. But it takes a lot of resources, and Pikachu could just break it or go over it or shoot the Thunderjolt higher up so it goes all the way around the wall. At this point, you might be wondering, so, Waidu, is there actually a setup that satisfies all these conditions, or did you just clickbait me? And the answer, as it turns out, is both, because I'm going to show you the setup right now, but again, it is absolutely not the one in the thumbnail. It looks a lot less cool, so I'm not putting it in the thumbnail. I just want to be clear about that. So the final result of all my testing looks like this. This is my optimal T-Jolt lightning rod. It doesn't look too fancy, but I can assure you that a lot of thought went into how this thing works. It's set up so that no matter where I do it, it'll actually divert the course of the T-Jolts in my favor, and I can mine and do whatever I want back here. If it hits the bottom block, it'll redirect it towards the top one. And if it manages to get stuck in the bottom of the bottom block right there, you can see what happens if I make Pikachu jump. It actually gets stuck in the bottom, just like that. So it's kind of a complete wall. Now, I had a setup previously that looked very similar, and it looked like this. It actually did everything the one I just showed you did, with one exception. If I do it too close to Pikachu, and Pikachu hits the wall of the top block, it'll come towards me anyway. But if I do it right, this setup mostly ignores that problem. Occasionally, you'll get a stray one that'll come towards me, but a very low chance of the T-Jolt actually hitting you. Which is, again, what we're hoping for here, right? It's going to be very hard to get something to be perfect, but I figured like this was the best balance of effectiveness and cheap materials that I could find. See, I'm going to do this from a bunch of different spacings here. If I do it here, it works. If I do it, let's say, over here, it'll also work. And this is really using the T-Jolt's really wide arc against it, because everything that hits the bottom block is going to bounce off of it and connect to the top one. And that's going to waste away the time that it takes before it disappears. It is a bit of a tight input, because you need to get a full double jump, and then you need to get a full hop, and then double jump afterwards. But if you do it right, again, look at this. I only used 2 blocks, and I'm mining so much more for having done that. Of course, Pikachu, as I'm sure you're aware, can do more than just throw out Thunderjolts. So, you know, the Pikachu player has all sorts of things they can do to stop this. But what's important is that you have a way to shield yourself from those T-Jolts. And there's lots of counterplay to what Pikachu wants to do against it, right? So if Pikachu tries to go over it, you can hit them with the axe or the pickaxe. You can't fishing rod the block itself, it'll bounce off. But what you can do is run underneath the block and it'll disappear. And then you can throw your fishing rod out there. Or, of course, you can down tilt underneath the block. So there's a lot of options you can do. This isn't the easiest thing at first, especially because if you stay on the block for too long, it'll disappear quickly. But I do believe that this can be really, really effective if mastered, to give you some tools against Pikachu's relentless Thunderjolts in this matchup. So yeah, while this was the best thing I could personally find, I wouldn't be surprised if there were more effective lightning rods out there. So I would say definitely get in the lab yourself and get practicing with this. Try to find your own methods. The way I'm making Pikachu jump and use T-Jolts right now is with the training mod pack, which is an amazing, amazing tool. It gives you this huge menu. So if you're able to get it, I definitely recommend it. It's made practicing so much easier for me. I'd like to finish up with a couple more things you can do against T-Jolts, because you don't always have to just build this thing. As I mentioned, parrying in this patch got 3 frames better. There was actually a glitch where a previous balance change they'd made to parry only got applied in training mode, but now this parry change affects the entire game. So especially if you're fighting someone in good connection, you might want to look into parrying and mining. Even so, I think it's very important to know setups like this to just stop all that from happening and be able to mine in peace for a little while. Lastly, you can always do this, which is putting down a block and then plopping down TNT and mining it. TNT costs a lot of resources, so this is probably not a good way to get building materials, but especially if you're close to that diamond or gold that you're looking for, or you need some more iron, this could be really useful, especially because on stages that don't have set drop rates like FD, Battlefield, Small Battlefield, Omega stages, that TNT is only going to give you iron, diamonds, gold, and redstone. So this is another effective strategy, potentially. And of course, if Pikachu tries to hit you out of it, you can always blow up the TNT with a lava bucket, buffer air dodge, and you'll be totally safe. Another thing that's really good for is you'd actually cancel your air dodge animation and act afterwards on the block. So you see I was able to use my pickaxe there. To show it clearer to you, I'll cancel it into up B. Like that. And that lets you do a lot of cool stuff if Pikachu tries to approach you. But I just think it's one more piece of the puzzle against Pikachu. So you'll have your TNT mining, you'll have your lightning rod setups that'll let you mine, and of course you have just parrying and effective anti-airs, right? So all these things come together, I think, to possibly make neutral not as bad as it seems against Pikachu at first, because definitely having played this matchup a bunch over the past couple days, I do think it's something that Steve could really struggle with. Pikachu can rush Steve down, but can also harass him with T-Jolts in a way that's really annoying. But, you know, one of the hallmarks of Steve is his ability to have all these really unique setups and techs that can even the playing field for him in terms of neutral. I'm talking about Steve as if it's all a struggle here, but, you know, if you catch Pikachu with a Arsene back air at 70, you know, he's just gone. It's not even close. So definitely every single second of mining you can get against this character is extremely important. Hopefully this tech will make that a little bit easier, but like everything else with Steve, only time will tell. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Get out there labbing some crazy lightning rod setups. Hopefully I can see some crazy stuff in the future. Definitely let me know if you find something ridiculous. I'm all ears, looking to get sick at Steve. I've been watching The Buzz's Steve recently, and that man is just insanely good at this game. So if you aren't already, I really recommend watching his gameplay. I mean, this is the guy who got 7th place at like a 500-person tournament, I think, what, like day 2 of Steve? The Buzz is definitely peak Steve right now, so if you're not watching him already, definitely make sure you get on that. As always, see you soon, subscribe, and happy Steving. You could also just, you know, take Pikachu to small battlefield and place one block, but that's boring.